Welcome back to another week of Extra-Ordi-Nerdy. This week we talk about the Capital City Comic-Con controversy, or better known as why boobs need context.
They need them.
So, gentlemen, for people that aren't familiar with it, why don't one of you, so that I don't sound too ranty, sum up the Capital City Comic-Con thing? Because I actually didn't even know about it until you told me.
Okay, well basically Capital City Comic-Con is a comic convention that's supposed to be coming around, I believe, in July. And so they're out there trying to put together flyers and promote their event. And they thought it would be clever to have a close-up of Power Girl. For those of you who don't know who Power Girl is a DC character who is very well endowed, and she literally has like a rectangle.
It's a boob cutout,
yeah, she has
right there.
Yeah, she has a boob window.
It's right above her nipples, and yeah.
Because it's not as if she has like a low cut shirt. She has a turtleneck with the boob window, so they went out of their way to show her breast. So, whatever that is. But I mean, basically, so they decided they were going to have a flyer with that being the focal point, with the words "Everything is bigger in Austin" as the joke. It's like, oh yeah, because her breasts are big. Oh, we're so clever.
Yeah.
So obviously they put that out, and I'm sure it was probably a room full of dudes like, oh yeah, that's so great. And I don't think they even meant any harm with it. But obviously they put it out there. People were upset, and they're like, yeah, we don't feel comfortable with this. We think this is sexist. People went as far as to say that we don't feel safe going to your convention. Their reply was, well, you obviously haven't been to many cons if you're upset by this. And that's pretty much when the whole firestorm started.
Yeah. It's the really unfortunate thing about this. Well, let me try and put it in a little bit of context. Gentlemen, before you came over here, what did you two do to prevent being raped tonight?
Nothing.
Also nothing, but also half a sit-up.
Half a sit-up. Hey, that's great, because you want to be in good shape for that type of thing. If you're a woman, the answer to that is going to start with, well, I always put my keys in between my fingers when I walk so that, I can jab somebody if they try to attack me. I've probably got mace in my purse. I only park someplace really well lit where there's a business nearby that's open while my car will be there I can get to. I can go on and on and on with the list. This is the baseline minimum existence for every single woman you know. Guys don't have to think about that at all. It never has to occur to you that I am unsafe just by the act of leaving my house, no matter how I'm dressed, no matter where I'm going, no matter what I'm doing. That's our baseline existence. Doesn't matter what you look like, doesn't matter what your age is, there it is. So when you put out something like that, that's like, hey, everything's bigger in Texas, and you're just taking those boobs out of context, and boobs are great, don't get me wrong, lots of women like to show theirs off, more power to them. That's in context. That's those women saying, I have made this choice to wear this because I want the attention, or whatever. They chose to leave the house dressed like that. But when you're saying that the whole purpose of going to the convention is to get boobs, when I saw that, the first thing that occurred to me was, oh my god, some guys are going to start walking up to women that are in cosplay going, is everything bigger in Texas? Yeah. And think that that gives them permission to just grab and honk. And so when people are saying, oh, it's not a big deal, I agree that it's much more harmless than a lot of things that are out there, but it's not great either, because what does it say? It says that you don't believe that the women coming to your convention are people. They're just there as an object. And there's a lot of women that are into fandom these days. A lot of women going to conventions, really enjoying it. My favorite quote from a big discussion online with this that I'm just going to read off of my iPad here, over from DC Women Kicking Ass. The woman who said, there's a fairly large Comic-Con in my city every year. Not huge, because we live too close to New York for that, but fairly large, and we've gotten some big names. I know several women who just happen to live near me who got into comics through watching Smallville, back to our discussion of the CW and how they're bringing a lot of women into these things. We met on the forums, and we wanted to meet up and go to the convention together. However, several of these women have expressed openly that they aren't comfortable going because of some of the images in the marketing, like the thing that he just mentioned. They don't feel safe. And this is in our home city. We live here. We know this city. It takes a rare breed to make women feel that uncomfortable in a city where they grew up, in a convention center where they've been to countless other events, and it's ridiculous that this goes on and on. So, here's my plea to any guy out there that's like, we don't care if the women are there at all. How many guys do you know that complain that they can't find a girlfriend who's into this stuff?
Yeah, quite a few.
You?
Lots.
You know why you can't find a girlfriend that's into this stuff? Because they don't feel safe going to your conventions. Because you explicitly went out there and said, It's just funny. Sexual harassment, hardy har har. Why would a woman want to come to that environment? You are missing out on your opportunity to find a girlfriend by letting these guys be douches.
Thanks for being that guy.
Now I will never find one, jackass.
I'm dead serious about that. Like, the CW in particular is real, and anime as well, are really getting women into fandom. They want to go to conventions, they want to dress up because, as I've discussed with other things, we're taught to dress up from an early age as Disney princesses and all that. There's so much appeal, except if you don't feel safe.
I just want to make this point where I think, like, because you had mentioned, a lot of guys are, they're condoning this because they're promoting sexual harassment. I think the problem, well, there's 2 points to that. But at one point, it's like a lot of guys are so oblivious because, like you mentioned, with what did we do to prepare to not get raped? It's like nothing because we're guys. It's like come try to rape this, but it's like it's not something that we think about ever. It's just like when a woman says like, oh, I'm afraid someone's going to grope me when I go to convention. For those that don't know, that happens.
Yeah.
It's a legitimate and really serious thing. And it's like a lot of guys have no idea, so they see like this boob flyer and they're like, "Oh, it's boobs." It's like, no, that's not the problem. It's not even just the fact that it's sexist; it's the fact that it promotes an unsafe environment because you already have these things occurring. And we had someone that when we posted the story on our site, they commented that they feel unsafe and they feel like if they were harassed at that convention, they don't feel like the people running the con would do anything about it because that's the image they're promoting.
And not only do I feel like they wouldn't. But if you go to the website, there's no FAQ at all.
Yeah.
At all. So there's nothing that shows that they have a stance.
They don't have a harassment policy.
Yeah, they have no anti-harassment policy on there.
And that is a problem. I mean, tying back to the whole what did you guys do to defend yourself, as a woman, if you go to a convention where this is the marketing, where they don't have the fact, where it's obvious that if anything happens to you, the people on the con committee are going to take one look at it and go, you chose to be here. You put yourself in harm's way. This is your fault. Not, this is the fault of the guy that came up and groped you. That's the message that you're giving to women when you put something like that out there. And some women are going to be okay with that. They're like, I'm big, I'm tough, I'm going to travel in packs with other women and no one's going to bug us. And some women are going to be like, I'm just going to stay home and pet my cat and watch the stuff on a DVR. It's a lot safer that way. And it's unfortunate because I really do believe that like 99% of the guys at these conventions are actually nice. It's the tiny 1% of assholes out there that are like, hey.
Yeah.
And they get a ton of attention because they don't tend to do it just once. Like they think that they can go nuts for the whole weekend. Any woman out there is full game. And it's up to dudes to get out there and be like, you gotta cut this out.
Yeah.
That is not right.
There's a whole campaign, which is called, cosplay is not consent.
Yeah.
Where it's like you see someone dressed up as Power Girl. That does not mean that you have the right to go grope her. I don't care how they're dressed. I don't care if they're wearing electrical tape and like that's all. Like, still, that's not an invitation.
Yeah.
You can look, but you can't touch. It's like it's ridiculous. And just to your point of the whole tagline of this episode, where things have to be in context. It'd be different if this was a flyer for say like a geek night at a Hooters.
Yeah.
Hooters sells
I
sex.
actually completely agree. I completely agree with that. That would be a great geek night at a Hooters flyer.
It's like, okay, you're really going there for that reason. I mean, legally, they have won in court that they sell sex. That is their product that they sell. A comic convention is for families. So people need to go there to feel safe. That's the entire point. It's supposed to be inviting and inclusive to everybody.
Yeah.
Not just guys that like boobs.
Yeah.
Which, if you want that, go to Hooters.
Well, and there's nothing wrong with admiring the women that have decided to dress up in something sexy. I'm obviously in a slightly more conservative Wonder Woman outfit here because that's my personal choice. But someone that's in, like, if she can rock the Linda Carter classic thing, more power to her. That takes a lot of dedication and work to keep your body in that type of shape. That doesn't mean you have a right to touch her, though. Not unless you've, like, got permission, explicit permission, not permission from the voices in your head. She has actually said, yeah. And I think that's another area that things get confusing. Like, there's a pickup scene at conventions. Hello, gentlemen. And it's great. Nerds want to breed with other nerds. That's fantastic. It's a good place to meet other geeks. And I think that's where you get that whole fuzzy line, because especially late at night when there's some partying going on, there's going to be some flirtation. You still have to use the exact same rules as would apply at a party that you're going to anywhere else. You flirt, but you just don't start by groping. And somehow that's become a thing at science fiction conventions. Like, flirtation begins with grabbing someone's ass, and if she doesn't like it, she'll walk away.
Yeah.
Instead of flirtation begins with, can I get you a drink?
Wow.
Yeah, it's like they assume that because you're in this context, then that automatically makes it okay. It's like, no, you're not at a strip club. This is a comic convention. It's not the same thing.
Yeah. So, getting back to the whole point of, like, don't let them scare away your future girlfriend. She wants to come to these conventions. I guarantee you. I talk to so many women who will actually say to me, like, I don't know if I could go to it. Like, you're loud and bold and you do that, but I'm quiet and shy. Like, guys like quiet, shy girls. A lot more than they like the really loud ones. Let me promise you that. But unless they've got these guys flanking them or something, they're just not going to feel comfortable. So what can a convention do to make it obvious that, hey, we're not going to turn our backs if anything happens to you, or we're not going to tell you it's all your fault, which is the message that I got from this flyer. If anything happens to you, it's all your fault. You should have known better. Why did you come here? What can conventions do instead?
Well, for one, being aware enough to not put out a flyer like that. You know? One of the conventions here that's another local convention that's actually a really good one is StapleCon. And they
Staple's awesome.
Yeah, they put out a statement on the whole issue. They're like, none of this type of behavior will be tolerated. Like, we will kick your ass out. Like, I forgot the way he phrased it, but he's like, I got some dudes that are ready to rumble, and if you do this, you're going out, face first. So it's like letting people know that right out the bat, like, this is a welcoming place. We're not going to discriminate against anybody.
Yeah.
And if there is any type of harassment or anything like that, like, it's zero tolerance policy.
Yeah.
Yeah, not only that did he come out and say that, but he said in the 10 years, because they just celebrated their 10th year doing StapleCon, Uncle Staple came out and said, in the 10 years that we've been doing this, we have never gotten a report saying that somebody got harassed.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that it didn't happen, but the fact that no one, and it's a local, it's a small thing, so I'm sure that if somebody did get harassed, they would come and say something. Word would get around really quick. So the fact that this has never happened, that's one of the better cons that you should be going to every year.
And Staple's fantastic. I can't recommend it highly enough. And that's an excellent point, because I went to Staple actually dressed exactly like I am right now. For a variety of reasons that involve some filming of other things. And you know what? Zero harassment whatsoever. It literally would not have even occurred to me in that environment.
Yeah.
And yet, I know a lot of people watching this like, well, that must have been really boring. No, it was awesome! Like, it had tons and tons of people. Like, it's mostly focused on comic book creators or any type of indie media. So there are all these people that are super excited. They want to show you the stuff that they've made. They want you to participate in some of the stuff they're making. Like, it's so high energy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Just talking to everybody there, and there's like, it's just such a positive environment. It's pretty much like you're going there. It's almost like even when you don't know these people, you feel like you're talking to a bunch of your friends.
Yeah, and there's plenty of day drinking going on as well, while you're just kind of like, there's a hot toddies, and it was a chilly day, and I was so happy with that. And so nobody minds the day drinking, nobody minds that you're just like wandering around, talking to strangers, that type of welcome, inclusive thing.
Yeah.
You know why I think that they were able to pull it off?
Why?
It's not a science fiction convention. It's a convention that happens to have a whole lot of indie media creators that do science fiction and fantasy things, but it's not ostensibly a science fiction convention. It doesn't market itself to that audience. They just show up anyway.
That's very true. On the other spectrum of that, the promoters of Emerald City Comic Con, after all this, because there was actually, I forget the name of it, but it was a Canadian Comic Con that came out just days after this whole thing with Austin Comic Con broke. And there was a similar thing where an email was sent out that said, get out of the cold, because this is Canada and it's constantly cold there. Get out of the cold, hug a cosplayer.
I think it was cuddle a cosplayer.
Cuddle a cosplayer.
Yeah,
so it was promoting, like, no, there's no touchy-feely stuff.
Yeah.
But then, so people complained about it in the Twitterverse and everywhere else, and the emails were cut and pasted and put on through the Mary Sue and Comics Alliance and all that other stuff. So they didn't retract their email blast. Instead, they sent out another blast. It had all the same stuff, cuddle a cosplayer, in parentheses, with consent. Like, that makes it better. But Emerald City Comic Con made a rebuttal to that and be like, instead, come to our convention, because you can check out the FAQs, which say not only are we against you doing anything, they promote the cosplay as consent, but consent, but they also have an anti-harassment policy, and they're one of the few that have a very extensive one that's pretty much mirrors all the laws of the county there. So I think more comic conventions need, or not just comic conventions, but sci-fi conventions, Ren Fair conventions, stuff like that, need to be doing those kinds of things. And if you're not going to have an anti harassment policy, at the very least, put on a damn FAQ so that we know that you're legit on some point or another, and not just make this, $5 website with picture of Power Girl's boobs on it.
Yeah. Another frustrating element of it for me was a lot of people seem to think that putting up a crotch shot of Batman was an apples and oranges type of thing. Like, oh, well, we'll show them that it's really funny because everything's bigger in Texas and it's a guy's groin instead. And the thing is, that's not apples and oranges. That's apples and elephants. It's such a completely different thing. Because guys are really proud of their dicks. And I don't blame you. You guys all seem to really quite adore them. And it's a power... it gets certain job done. And it's a power thing for men. Like, everything about their penis is like, look at me, look at how powerful this is. It's awesome. It's also the thing that is used to cause certain types of assault. So there's all positive thing, power and strength with that. Breasts are exactly the opposite. Breasts are something that are beheld. It's like the whole observer thing and whatnot. So you can't really compare saying like, oh, well, we're just going to do a crotch shot compared to the boobs. It's not the same thing at all. It's enhancing male power in one case and dehumanizing women in the other. It's not the same. I'm sorry, there's just not a one-to-one correlation you're going to find.
No.
Yeah, not at all. It's like, I mean, pretty much with the way society is, like, a guy wants to be looked at. I mean, if he was walking down the street and women were ogling him, he's like, oh, I won the day.
Yeah.
I retired, whatever.
I think that's a really important point. Because as far as the difference of opinion and perception of things like that, women find it creepy because, again, you've got to leave your house every day prepared to defend yourself, literally physically defend yourself. So that oogling and whatnot, that's a possible precursor to assault.
Yeah.
For men, that's not the case. If someone's oogling them, that means, ooh, maybe I'm going to get laid. That's a very happy thing. And presumably everyone will be consenting if she's oogling him and wanting him to go do something with her. Whereas if a guy's oogling a woman, there may not be consent going on there. And that's the number one thing of, like, how do you find that line? I think it's hard for guys to wrap their heads around that because, for example, with the touching, I've had so many guys at conventions say, I don't know what your problem is. I'd be thrilled if a woman just walked up and stuffed her hand in my pants. And I'm sure you would. I'm sure you would love it if women just walked in like, how's it going, as a hello. That's not gonna happen. That's just not the way society works. And trying to compare that to what you consider to be your right to walk up and be like, hello, ladies, it's not the same.
Yeah, it's the fact that they can't wrap their mind around it. It's that in and of itself is a problem.
Yeah.
It's like, just going back to the rape thing again, it's like, yeah, guys, not all guys, obviously, but there's a group of guys where, like, they just don't understand this because it's not their reality.
Yeah,
and
it's hard. It displays ignorance and gross negligence on their part, like, and it's awful. It's terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and sometimes it's not even necessarily malicious. Like, when we had posted this article on our Facebook page, someone had commented where he's like, well, I know that all the professionals that for any convention he'd been part of, they've been all professional towards the cosplayers. Yeah. He's like, but I don't know if that's necessarily the case for some of the con-goers. And I was thinking, like, yeah, that's exactly the issue, where it's like, yeah, you assume that that's the case, but it isn't. I've told this story several times. Like, right when I walked into one of the Wizard Worlds, literally the second I set floor on the convention floor, there's two girls that are cosplaying, and one turns to her friend, and apparently one had been to cons a lot, and the other one, was kind of brand new. He's like, prepare to have your ass grabbed.
Yeah.
And she's just like, really? Like, she thought she was just messing with her. She's like, no, seriously, like, just prepare yourself.
Yeah.
So when that's, like, literally the first thing you hear when you walk in, you know that that's a reality. It's not just, like, someone just getting offended because you're like, oh, this is inappropriate, these are breasts, we shouldn't be showing these. It's like, no, there are serious considerations there.
Yeah. Yeah, and I hate to say, but a lot of people think it only happens to the pretty girls. No. The guys that are doing this, they don't really care. Any flesh that they can get their hands on, they're pretty happy with. I cannot count the number of times I've been in a crowded elevator, and, like, we're all about to go up, and then, like, oh, and you know that this is going to be the dude who forces his way on, because he's waiting for that elevator to be super crowded, worms his way in, and, like, every single woman in there starts yelping at some point in time because you've been grabbed. And the guys tend to laugh it off, like, as though it's no big deal, and then everybody gets upset when the women are like, no, cut it out. I'm like, well, he'll get off the elevator next. Why does he have a right to ruin everybody's experience because he thinks that's funny?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing where, like you pointed out, like, some guys that won't speak up. I think it would be the reality would be a lot different if some creepy guy in the elevator grew up somebody and the dude's just like what the hell, immediately there's because it's one thing obviously where women speak up, but like when it's also your peers and they're showing like, no, we don't condone this, we don't behave that way. Because it's like when people acquiesce and they don't say anything, it almost is like it's condoning it in their mind.
Yeah,
they're like, oh, it's okay, no one's saying anything,
exactly.
It's fun, But when you actually, because sometimes it really is the thing where they're so, for lack of a better term, they're so socially inept that they don't realize like this is not something you should do until someone blatantly throws it in their face, where they're like, oh, I should ask first, you know.
And I completely agree that this is something that men need to be on top of. Like, men need to be policing other men. Because if women say it, there's a whole lot of, like, tee-hee, whatever, she's just bitchy type of thing. Whereas if guys are saying it, like, there's more authority, I hate to say, coming from one guy to another. And there's also, I hate to say, but, like, that level of possession going on where if you're in the crowded elevator situation and someone, even if he doesn't know the woman next to him, is like, dude, cut it out. I think the guy that's doing the groping is going to assume that guy might beat him up. Maybe that guy is dating that girl, or is a brother of that girl, or something along those lines. There is suddenly a threat going on there. And I'm not saying we should go around threatening one another at conventions, but just simply like, dude, cut it out. Yeah. That's not cool. Yeah. That's all you have to say. Cut it out. That's not cool. You don't have to make a huge deal about it. Just, people respond so well to scorn. As far as like social punishment, I don't think there's anything worse you can do. Like if you go on a tirade and whatnot, people can write it off like, oh, that person must be drunk or crazy. But if you just clearly are just absentmindedly disgusted by someone, that is something you're going to remember the next day.
Yeah, when you're just very stern and to the point, I mean, it cuts that much more deeper. Because then, like so they can't write it off. They can't just pretend like, oh, this guy's overreacting, or he doesn't know what he's talking about. But when it's just like you said, like it's just directly to the point, then they can't really have a rebuttal. They can't try and laugh it off, or they're just like, oh no, I'm playing around. I was like, no, you're not. Yeah. Don't do this. Then it's just like, all right, there's like that awkward silence and that feeling they get where they're like, all right, well.
Yeah. Well, this brings up something that we're going to discuss on a different episode as well, which is within Fanish culture, there's this idea that you cannot ostracize anyone. That if you, heaven forbid, tell someone you're doing it wrong, that you are the evil outsider and you're trying to oppress people and things along those lines. And some of us are not that well socially skilled. Worse yet, some of us are that well socially skilled and take advantage of it. As just knowing that everyone's going to turn around and go, well, there by the grace of God go I. He's just awkward, or something like that. And we need to cut that out. Fandom is not this tiny little thing that it used to be where you had to protect everybody in your tribe because there just weren't that many of you and you didn't want to lose anyone. Now, Comic-Con gets, 150,000 people?
Yeah.
They started selling only day passes because they can't fit everyone there. Dragon Con's up over 50,000. Wow. It's a big deal. And at this point, it's okay to say to people, that's not cool.
I completely agree.
Well, I think that wraps it. Oh, what you got?
Well, it's not only that it's not cool, it's against the law.
Yeah.
It's against the law. It's sexual harassment, groping in public, Don't do it. Just don't.
It's, see, and I actually, believe it or not, have a tiny, tiny bit of sympathy. I know this sounds weird for the gropers, just because a lot of conventions, especially with the nightlife, are a very sexually heightened atmosphere.
Yeah.
And you've got to learn to navigate that. You have to pick up the social skills. And I don't mean go to a PUA forum. That is not where you pick up these social skills. We as ladies laugh our asses off at you PUA guys. You're not fooling anybody. That's actually one of my favorite things to sit around with. Like, oh my god, he thought he... Yeah, anyway, so what you need to do instead is figure out how you can actually flirt in a way that's going to accomplish your goal of like, hey, maybe I'll get her number, maybe I'll get more than that.
Get some game.
Yeah. And it can, I'm just, it can work.